back to the 2023 NBA offseason, we get one of the more impactful trades in NBA history. And that trade was the Milwaukee Bucks going out and finding a superstar player to pair with Giannis Antetokounmpo in an attempt to maximize his elite basketball prime. And what the Milwaukee Bucks did, they went out there and they got Damian Lillard. And how they made this deal work, it was a 3-team deal between the Milwaukee Bucks, the Portland Trail Blazers, and the Phoenix Suns. It shuffled a bunch of players to those 3 different teams. But what we're focusing on today was Damian Lillard basically going to the Milwaukee Bucks in exchange for Jrue Holiday. Jrue Holiday, he ended up with the Portland Trail Blazers. And what makes this so memorable for me, of course, all the things that has happened after this trade, it was very impactful. And we got a bunch of, chain reaction events. But I'll never forget when this trade initially happened, man. I watch First Take a lot. A lot of people don't like First Take. I like to put it on when I'm doing other tasks, have it as background noise. But I remember Brian Windhorst, man. And I'm actually, I've been very fond of Wendy ever since because, everything he said since then, it's been pretty accurate, and he seems like he has a lot of integrity. But I remember after they made this trade for Damian Lillard, Brian Windhorst, he came on First Take and he said that this move, it might haunt the Milwaukee Bucks because they left Jrue Holiday out in the open on Portland Trail Blazers for one of their rival teams to come and snatch up Jrue Holiday, and one of those teams was the Boston Celtics. I think this trade happened on Friday. First Take was on Friday, and I believe by that following Monday, Jrue Holiday, he was a Boston Celtic. They completed a trade. They sent Robert Williams III, Malcolm Brogdon, and 2 first-round draft picks in exchange to get Jrue Holiday. And here we are. This happened in the 2023 NBA offseason. We are just in the 2025 NBA offseason. And Brian Windhorst, he came up being right. He ended up being right. This was a nightmare for the Milwaukee Bucks. And like we said, since this trade has happened, a lot of chain reaction type things have happened since this trade. And the biggest thing that this did for the Eastern Conference for the Milwaukee Bucks is that, it made one of their rivals, the Boston Celtics, if I'm not mistaken, the Boston Celtics, the year they made it to the 2022 NBA Finals, I believe they knocked out the Milwaukee Bucks on their way to that championship. So it seemed like these were teams that were going to be, Jason Tatum and Giannis Antetokounmpo. These 2 guys are not far off of each other when it comes to age. So it seems like these was going to be some teams that could be meeting down the line in the NBA playoffs, for years to come. So what this did, it allowed for and I'm sure the Milwaukee Bucks, they didn't know that the Boston Celtics would be able to get Jrue Holiday so easily. But what it did, a team in their conference, it just made them so goddamn good, because earlier in the offseason we seen the Boston Celtics, they trade Marcus Smart and they bring in Kristaps Porzingis. They had Derek White emerging. We already know what Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum is. And then when you put Jrue Holiday on this team, it just makes them unfair. It made them unfair on both sides of the basketball. We knew what the Boston Celtics, they became really the first team that can just, really run that 5-out offense, and it's like a video game. Like they really had, one just no center, like Brook Lopez. He can knock down that 3-point shot, but he's a streaky shooter. He's not a pure shooter. He's a streaky shooter. When you get a center like Kristaps Porzingis who can actually shoot the blood out of that basketball, it just makes it so much unfair. So we're seeing the Boston Celtics by this trade, they kind of get a video game-like offense, a legit 5-out offense with, Jason Tatum at the helm of that, Jaylen Brown at the helm of that, 2 guys that are vicious at getting downhill and finishing around the rim. So you have 2 guys that can pick constant pressure on the rim, and then you have 5 guys that can knock down an open 3-point shot. And we seen the Boston Celtics, the 2 years that they did have this team, they were elite at bombing and knocking down 3-point shots. It became their identity, and it made them damn near impossible to beat. So you have that, and not only did it bolster them on the offensive side of the ball, it bolstered them on the defensive side of the ball, because like we said, we had Derek White emerging, becoming one of the most elite two-way players in the NBA, and then you pair him with Jrue Holiday, so now you have a backcourt of Jrue Holiday and Derek White on the defensive side of the ball. You can take turns each and every night, giving those two guys the toughest defensive assignment. And then you just have a bunch of size around these two, Bulldogs, who, them two guys themselves, I think Jrue Holiday is 6'5", Derek White is like 6'4". That's tremendous size for the guard position, and they're tenacious defenders. And then you have Jason Tatum, you have Jaylen Brown, Kristaps Porzingis, Al Horford, all of these guys around these defenders. It just made them so much tougher on the defensive side of the ball. So that's one of the chain reaction events that came from this trade. And then also we got to look at the Milwaukee Bucks making the decision to go out and get Damian Lillard. And we go back to the situation. It was a real tricky situation. During this time, we heard so many different things, and even still today, we hear so many different things about the situation. Now, I remember, it was just another year of the Portland Trail Blazers not coming anywhere near to a NBA championship, and they have this polarizing player, and Damian Lillard, who went down on the NBA all-time 75 list, and I'm not mad at that. As a talent, as the production, and I watched Damian Lillard a lot when I was before I was even an adult, and he really is like that. So we have this player in Portland, and kind of this narrative got created that, hey, Damian Lillard, he needs to go somewhere else where he can compete for a championship. And Dame, he had that motto, he's loyal. He want to stay in Portland. He want to play his whole career in Portland. But, as these noises kept creeping into his brain, he was like, competing for a championship, that might sound kind of nice. If I had to go anywhere, I want to go to Miami. We kept hearing Damian Lillard in Miami, but the Portland Trail Blazers was like, trading you to Miami, that's not gonna get us the most bang for our buck. So they make this deal for the Milwaukee Bucks, and it was never came out that Dame wanted to go to the Milwaukee Bucks. And we hear all these reports that Damian Lillard is not happy with the Milwaukee Bucks. He's not happy in Milwaukee. He's not happy being away from his kids and his family in Portland. And we look at Damian Lillard, he didn't look like Dame time. He wasn't playing terrible or anything with the Milwaukee Bucks, but he didn't look like Dame time. And this duo, and we didn't get to see them in action much in the playoffs, but this duo of Giannis Antetokounmpo and Damian Lillard, even in the regular season, they just didn't seem like they fully ever meshed. And I remember being so excited about seeing Giannis Antetokounmpo and Damian Lillard playing on the same court, because it's like, from a basketball on paper, these two guys' skill set, they match up so well with each other. When you have Giannis, who a lot of people call him the modern day Shaq, he get that ball anywhere inside the restricted area, anywhere inside the paint, is damn near a guaranteed bucket, unless you have three guys hack him. Even if one guy is hacking him down there, he still might finish the basketball. And then you get him this counterpart, Damian Lillard, who can bomb from anywhere on the basketball court, going past court. And it was so much more than that. A pick and roll maestro, can get guys involved, doesn't shoot too many mid-range shots, but he has that in his bag. And then the most underrated part of Damian Lillard's game, he's so good at shooting a three-point shot. He's just as good as a finisher around the rim. So you get these two guys together, and you just think that it's going to work, but it just wasn't the case. But like we said, we get all these reports that Damian Lillard, he was never really feeling it in Milwaukee. And when you have that glooming over a player's head, it really is hard to find that synergy, find that spark, find that explosiveness on the court if one of your best players, one of your franchise players is not feeling it. So we get, Damian Lillard in Milwaukee for 2 years, and, him and Giannis Antetokounmpo, they suffer a lot of injuries, and we just never get to see these guys. We just never get to really see these guys on the court together when it mattered the most, or in the regular season for long periods of time. And we've seen the Milwaukee Bucks, they've done so many things to try to make this work. They got rid of Chris Middleton to bring in Kyle Kuzma, and I was excited about that as well. But Kyle Kuzma, he did not come out and play like that guy that won a championship in 2020. So that was another unfortunate thing with the Milwaukee Bucks. And it just got a little worse this offseason. The Milwaukee Bucks, they decide to waive Damian Lillard, and they have to pay him a buttload of money still from the deal that that he was already on. So now Dame, he's a free agent, and we all were led to believe that Damian Lillard, he was going to nurse his Achilles injury, and he was going to wait towards the end of the season to see if he could help a team, win a championship for the minimum, since he's getting all this money from the Milwaukee Bucks. But he shocked us all this offseason when Damian Lillard, he decides to go back to the Portland Trail Blazers on a very player-friendly contract for him. It's a good deal for Damian Lillard. It's 3 years, $42 million. This year on this contract, with what the Bucks have to pay him and what the Trailblazers have to pay him, Damian Lillard is going to be making $70 million just to sit and rehab his Achilles. So that's a big-time W for Damian Lillard. I think he has a player option in the second year, after the second year of his contract. So if he wants to leave, he can leave. And then also he has a no-trade clause. So just looking at all of this is like the Milwaukee Bucks. You guys see the title of the video. This is why I say the Bucks gave the Boston Celtics a free ring, because they go out and make this trade to bring in Damian Lillard to the Milwaukee Bucks. They use him for 2 years. They don't get much out of it. They don't ever get out of the. I don't think they got out of. They don't get out of the first round of the NBA playoffs. They used to the Indiana Pacers both years, if I'm not mistaken, or maybe they do got a playoff series. I can't remember off the top of my head how it went down last NBA season, but nonetheless, they used Dame for 2 years. They give up a lot of their assets, and now both Jrue Holiday and Damian Lillard, they're currently on the Portland Trailblazers. The Portland Trailblazers, I'm not letting them off the hook here either. They're going to be paying a lot of money to DeAndre Ayton this season. They're going to be paying a lot of money to Jrue Holiday this season, and they're going to be paying a lot of money to Damian Lillard this season. So both these teams, they just paved the Boston Celtics. They gave them a really good team, and they gave them a really easy championship in my opinion. That's how good that Boston Celtics team was in today's game. The way that the game is played, with the 3-point shots, the spacing, they had the perfect team. So that's what I want to talk about with you guys today. That whole situation was crazy. I want to know what you guys think about it down in the comment section. If you enjoyed, please leave a like, and then comment down below. Subscribe for more weekly content. We do this all the time, man. And that's curtains.